Hi, I'm David Berlin, Editor-in-Chief of ProgrammableWeb, and this is a special sponsored edition of ProgrammableWeb's Developers Rock podcast. Today with me is Vince O. He is the Director of Product Management with Telesign, an API provider of the sort that we would have in our API directory, the sort of company that we would write about. Vince, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So let's start off with talking about what it is Telesign does for its customers in a nutshell.
Sure. Telesign is a cPaaS, or a communication platform as a service, and we have a unique differentiation around providing a combination of communication APIs as well as data solutions that enable our customers to intelligently engage with their end users throughout their entire lifecycle.
Okay, so communication APIs, data. Let's talk about the communication APIs first. What are some of those APIs, and what do they do for your enterprise customers?
Sure. So we have an SMS API, allows customers to enable global delivery of SMS and two-way communications as well. We have a voice API, which again is for automation of outbound calling, inbound, two-way communication, et cetera. And then we are actually planning to launch our RCS data API for rich communications next week.
Okay, and how did you get started doing all of this?
Actually, it's very interesting. We were actually founded back in 2005, and we started out as more focusing on a particular use case, right, which is to authenticate users using phone numbers, and then over time, as our business grew, our customers demanded to utilize our best of breed communication solutions for more than that. So we expanded out to kind of general purpose alerts, reminders, notifications, two-way communication flows.
Let's talk about the authentication piece. A lot of people probably are familiar with what you're talking about. I think I am. This is sort of like where you go to log in, but it double checks who you are based on your phone number. Can you walk us through that workflow and where Telesign fits in?
Sure. So, there's a number of those kinds of flows, right? So when you sign up for an account on your email provider, et cetera, they ask you to add a phone number to your account. The first thing that happens is you enter your phone number, and then the web property will verify to make sure that you have that number, right? So then they send you a one-time passcode, and then you enter it back in, and now that phone number becomes a trust anchor to your account. So for subsequent logins or password resets and things like that, when basically there are certain characteristics that the company or the website looks for potentially like different IP address from before or different device. In those cases, then they would challenge you and say, "Hey, I need to make sure that you're you." And so they, in addition to a password, they ask you again to do a one-time passcode challenge, and so they will send you a code to your phone via SMS or voice call, and then you basically validate that you have that second factor before you log in.
Right, I'm familiar with that because like sometimes you switch computers, you go to log into your bank, and they're like, "We don't recognize this computer, so we're going to send you a passcode." So you're the ones that are in the background. We don't really see your logo come up or anything like that, but is that your company in the background providing that capability to these big companies?
Yeah, Telesign actually powers a lot of those workflows. So, we actually work with 20 of the top 25 largest web and mobile properties across the world to enable those two-factor authentication flows. More often than not, I tell people when I talk about Telesign, I say, "Hey, you probably use Telesign, but you just don't know because we're just in the background."
Have no idea, right? Okay, so you got started in the authentication space, but that kind of lent itself to a lot of other applications. You were talking about the SMS application. Obviously, you have the phone number of the customer at this point, so you're in the natural position to also handle SMS communications. Is that a two-way thing? So do you just do outbound SMS, or can people respond to that? How does that work?
Sure. Both, right? So outbound as well as respond or a user-initiated workflows. So we provide the ability for a company or a brand to communicate with their end user using SMS as a channel. again, outbound messages, typically there's a lot of those with alerts and reminders like shipping alerts, or, your flights changed, or, something changed in your account, things like that. And then, but also two-way interaction for, potentially replying to that, saying, hey, I want more information, or kind of potential chatbot type of workflows as to where you can automate things like, customer support, using SMS as a channel.
Now, based on your experience working with your customers, is SMS the most effective channel of communication compared to some other ones? Like, I know I get notifications that pop up on my smartphone screen, not necessarily from the SMS channel that's coming into it. Also, there's email. Does it turn out that SMS is the best way?
Yeah, so definitely, SMS is one of the most effective channels, especially when you compare to things like push notifications and email. SMS has a open rate of about I believe 90% of all SMSs are opened within the first 3 minutes, and I think there's about a action rate of about 20% there. So compare that to something like email, which has maybe I believe much lower than that, like 20% maybe, and then the action rate is much lower than that as well. So it doesn't compare to email. You look at SMS as more of a real-time communication and more of a personal communication channel versus email or even push, right? The push doesn't have quite the response rate either, because you often get bombarded with push notifications, or you just turn them off. Mm-hmm. People see SMS as a channel that's much more, again, things that are important to you, or things that you need to pay attention to. And so, folks really end up interacting with it more than those other channels.
Now, if you have got my phone number, and when I say that I mean like your customer has the phone number because they've collected it through your API, is there some additional intelligence that goes with that? And the reason I ask that is because there are a lot of phone numbers out there. People are establishing fake accounts all the time using phone numbers. How do you spot whether a phone number is even a good phone number? I could go out and get one of those one-time use phones and then throw it away. Like, how do you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And actually that's what our customers started facing, after they've rolled out two-factor authentication. They started using phone numbers. They want to use phone numbers kind of at sign up as well to kind of validate the user. And what they started seeing was people were using kind of these potentially fraudulent, low cost types of numbers to get by, and using those numbers to create a bunch of bulk accounts, right? And so then you can do a number of things with that to commit fraud. And so what we provided for them, again, as a need from the customer, is kind of starting with the ability to just simply be able to know, like, okay, what phone type is this, right? So typically we've associated or have seen a lot of that type of fraud associated with non-fixed VoIP numbers, right? And as well as in some cases prepaid numbers. And so
is an example of that like the virtual accounts? Like I happen to be a Google Voice user. Is that like an example? Because I'm assuming there's APIs just to go get those numbers and then deactivate them. So definitely. So non-fixed VoIP, those kinds of numbers you can acquire basically for free. And so people will just get a bunch of those numbers, and they would you again use them to create a bunch of fake accounts, which again defeats the purpose of using phone number as a proof. And there's also other things like there are websites out there that allow folks to, we just call them like receive SMS online types of websites where the whole purpose of those websites are giving access to a bunch of numbers via the web that help you complete one-time passcode challenges. And so we help our customers detect things like that, and then we evolve that over time to something that's much more intelligent, and we call that SCORE. And so SCORE actually provides a risk score associated with any number across the world. And so it's so it's less of a black or white. Is this a VoIP number? And if so, I'm going to block you. It's more, okay, on a scale of 0 to 1,000, what is the probability that this number is associated with fraud? Okay, so you're sort of leaving it up to the customer to decide at what point the score is bad enough that they're going to refuse the account or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Definitely. And so, we have the ability to train the models using machine learning. So
Oh,
we work with the customer then to, train the model based on, labeled data. And then, they, through that process, the customer can also figure out, okay, for me, score above 700, for example, generally means that I'm going to capture most fraud with the minimum amount of false positives.
now, is that data that you're collecting or that you have that helps you determine the risk and some of the other data that's associated with the number? Is that data easy to get, or did you have to create relationships with a whole bunch of other companies, carriers, et cetera, in order to gather that data and then, programmatically through your API, tell a bank, for example, hey, this number is too risky? How did you get all that information?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of proprietary know-how and algorithms associated with, us, having worked in, security workflows over the last, 14 years. So we've developed, kind of, again, in-house knowledge associated with, okay, well, what kind of patterns are going to be associated with, most likely associated with different kinds of fraud as one area. And then the data itself that we would leverage it's a combination of working directly with the mobile operators to try to, acquire the right data points so that we can determine the score. And then the other thing is, we have, abundance of new data points and real-time data that we can now, potentially work with our acquirer, if you would, Bics. So Telesign was acquired by a company called Bics. It was a telco. It was one of the largest data.
How's that spelled?
Bics is BICS.
Okay.
And so we're working with them to actually further analyze traffic patterns using their all the traffic information that they have. And so a combination of all of those things really like driving up the value of score and the efficacy of score.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the new data products that you're deploying these days?
So we're actually adding, so we kind of aligned our data products kind of twofold, right? So one is the score that we talked about, and the other is our suite of phone ID products. Mm-hmm. And the base phone ID product does what it did many, many years ago, which is just provide the kind of the high level, the phone type and the carrier information. But we've been launching additional add-ons on top of that. So things like name and address or name and address match, being able to provide device information. So, what type of device is this? What is, kind of maybe the hashed IMEI associated, things like that. Also, subscriber information. So, for example, knowing the tenure of a subscriber, what kind of subscriber are you? Are you postpaid? Are you in a family plan? That nature to kind of help with understanding kind of you can actually, there's a very interesting potential use case around that information where in a lot of countries where it's really difficult to determine creditworthiness, you could actually leverage like the tenure and the type of account that you have with an operator to, kind of at least as a data point to help understand creditworthiness of a particular potential customer. So
the number's only been active for like, a couple weeks, kind of sketchy, but if that number's been active for a couple of years, much better. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So things like that. And then also additional products that really help with potential risk associated with account takeover, right? So, we've heard things on the news or, on the web around, people hijacking other people's phone numbers and then using that to log in. Mm-hmm. So, we're providing information like number porting, SIM swap, deactivation. So we know when a phone number could have potentially changed hands and if that's happened very recently, and then all of a sudden you start to see a bunch of transactions in that account, you can definitely flag that as suspicious.
Very interesting. So ton of data that would be useful in a variety of contexts, everything from risk management to, I imagine, marketing. Some of this data is going to be useful to somebody who's a marketer. Any other standout, unique selling propositions that make Telesign special that you can think of?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, like we talked about the data. So, like you said, David, in addition to kind of security or those kinds of use cases, there's also, the data helps our customers understand or have valid information about their end users, so that when they communicate with them, they have peace of mind that the person actually still has that phone number. So if you send an SMS or you try to call them, you can check to see if the number's been deactivated since the last time I talked to you. And if it has, then that's no longer good information. So so we help with customer engagement scenarios by differentiating with data. The second piece was, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but again, because of the way that we grew up through authentication being integrated into customers' login flows and registration flows, we had to build a best of breed solution platform for messaging and also voice in terms of quality. And so, we have, basically, again, quality differentiation from my perspective. And then also, I think, last but not least, is the way that we service our customers. And so, we're actually really good at, working with enterprise customers, medium to large, as well as small as well. And so that's kind of in our pedigree of, in doing right by the customer, creating great relationships and being responsive and proactive and, just giving the customer the right kind of experience so that they want to work with us.
Okay, and do you have any new products that are about to be launched that you want to talk about, or you got to keep that sort of news under wraps until it's launched?
Actually. So next week, we will be launching our RCS API in beta. So RCS is, Rich Communication Services. It's basically the evolution of SMS, if you would. So it's kind of the next generation of the default messaging on your mobile device, which is graphical, much more interactive versus SMS, which is basically just all text. And so we're pretty excited about it. Again, we'll be launching next week in beta, and we'll be working with our customers to kind of at least just starting with doing some proofs of concept and kind of showing them the value of RCS. And then hopefully later part of the year, we can launch it GA.
And how does that work? Just out of curiosity, you have a new product, you go to your existing customers, say, hey, look, we've got a new API. Do you want to kick the tires on that so that you can get feedback from them and perfect it? Or do you put the API out there for general beta and let any developer come and kick the tires? How do you normally do that sort of thing?
Sure. So it's interesting because Telesign, we've actually, I've been at Telesign for about 5 years, and we've not had a lot of betas. And so, specifically for RCS, it'll only be available for, existing customers.
Okay.
Already have a relationship with, and it won't be, like you can't, as a developer, you can't just come to our self-service portal and use it. You'd have to contact us and work with us. And so, of course, we're not necessarily just completely limiting ourselves to existing customers, but if somebody comes in and they want to build more of a direct relationship with us, then we can make that available to them as well.
Got it. And what about the business model behind your APIs? How do you normally charge your customers? Is it by a number of API executions? Are there just basic subscription levels? What's your business model here?
Sure. So typically it's transactional. So, every SMS you send, every data request that you make, every, voice call. Voice call is kind of more of a per second kind of rating, but basically, so it's just done. Basically, you pay for what you use. You do have some subscription type of models when we get creative with the customer a little bit. So we kind of do that as an incentive for our customers to get more discounts on your subscription levels. But yeah, generally, I mean, you just basically you sign up with Telesign, and then you just pay for what you use.
Terrific. And where can people who are interested in doing business with you find you?
Sure. I mean, you definitely come to our website at www.telesign.com, and then there is a contact us kind of form there, and so they can use that to contact us, and then it'll get to the right people on the sales and marketing side.
Is there a developer portal that people can come and sort of poke around and see just exactly how the different APIs work so they can sample them and get an idea before they contact you?
Yeah. So if you go to the website, you can sign up for an account, and then on that website, once you're signed up, then you'll have access to some of our APIs. Like I said, there's certain APIs that have restrictions, like the beta one, and then some specific data APIs because they're pretty tightly guarded because of
Sensitive data.
Exactly. Yep. So aside from those, like most of the APIs are available via the self-service portal online. Again, you can go through our telesign.com website.
Terrific. Well, Vince O, Director of Product Management for Telesign, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, David.
And thank you, everybody, for watching this interview. It has been a sponsored version of ProgrammableWeb's Developers Rock podcast. Please come back to ProgrammableWeb or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ProgrammableWeb, where you'll find more interviews just like this one.